All right. Hey, everybody. Drew McClellan here from Agency Management Institute. Good to see all of you. This is the first of the member-only webinars that we have for this year. So just a reminder, as always, with the member-only webinars, you are welcome to have any and all of your team members join in live or watch the recording, but we ask that you not share it outside of that. So I want to just introduce Emma to you, and then I'm just going to hand things over. So just a couple rules of the road. Emma's going to start the presentation. As always, the more interactive we can make this, the better. So if you have a question, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it. I suspect we won't have a lot of talking over each other. So if everybody can stay muted, unless you have a question to ask, that would be great. And then we will also stop at the end to answer any other questions that you may have. So feel free to jump in at any point and ask for clarification or examples or whatever would be helpful to you. The less this is a monologue, I know, the better that is for Emma, and I think for all of you as well. So, and with that, let me introduce to you Emma Watt. Emma is with a company called Dot & Co, which many of us have talked about before. So Dot & Co, the founder of Dot & Co, Taylor, was on the podcast probably a couple of years ago, and they have built a company where they actually outsource account service for agencies. When I first heard of the company and before I met Taylor and talked to her, I have to admit I was a little skeptical if that was possible, because we think of that relationship being so close to the heart and that you want to keep it in-house and all of that. And then after talking to Taylor and talking to some agencies that have worked with them, they really have found a way to build a model where they can support
Not
clients.
on video or music. Thanks to Lydia.
Hey guys, mute yourselves if you will. Thank you. All right, Emma, I'm going to hand this over to you. A little introduction. Whoop, hang on. Hey kids, mute yourself. You are not muted. All right, Emma, take it.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. I didn't realize this was the first one of the year, so I really appreciate
you're the big kickoff, so a lot of pressure on you now. Gotta
Not
bring
at all. Not at all, I'm sure. But thank you. Thank you for having myself and Taylor. Taylor's also on the call today as we talk about maximizing client relationships with proven strategies for agencies. So like Drew said, as I'm going through everything, feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, get me to explain things further. I love questions, so let me know. We are Dot & Co. So we're here to help digital marketing agencies keep their clients happy. And as Drew mentioned, we work on a fractional basis. So every one of our client account managers works at multiple digital advertising agencies, white labeling as basically their full-time client account manager. So I myself am a client account manager and also the training manager at Dot & Co, because we partner with agencies where I train their agency CAMs, and we build a lot of community around this CAM term. So moving forward, I'll just say CAM. A CAM is anyone who is the sole responsible person for your client relationships. So it could be you as the agency owner, it could be the director or project manager. I've heard so many interchangeable titles for this role, but us ourselves call them CAMs, so client account managers. So let's talk about a problem. You didn't create an agency to be stressed about the what ifs. What if my biggest client doesn't renew for another month? Or what if I lose clients this month? Or what if I'm not scaling my business? Or where is my growth? I actually was talking to an agency owner the other day, and we were talking about a difficult client situation, and we figured it out together, thankfully. And she was like, okay, one less thing I have to worry about at 3 a.m. And I was like, well, please give me the list. Like, what else are you worrying about? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that problem that we all face with doing all of the things. And maybe you handle a lot of client communication because you feel like you have to, or you're that person to take on those client relationships, or you have an account manager that should be taking the lead, but maybe isn't quite ready to take ownership of that client relationship. Do you trust that person to upsell your services and build those long-lasting client relationships just like you would. You want them to speak your language, but maybe they're not there yet in their knowledge of digital marketing or whatever it might be. And the problem is you don't know proven ways to build client relationships for the long term. And you can't be at the beck and call of your clients' wins and wishes. Of course, we all wish we could, but you have a strategy to create and you have ads to run and you have 5 million other things on your plate. And did you remember your client's birthday last weekend? That's kind of their thought process of you're doing all the things. What about the little things as well? So there is a lot of opportunity. Building feel-good, long-lasting, trusting relationships do start at the beginning. So the onboarding process of that client journey. You want to get to know your clients on a personal level, so you develop an understanding of how they think and what they need, and really who they are as people, because there's such a human element to client relationship management and building these long-lasting, trusting relationships. And there are ways to improve your systems by implementing easy tactics to develop these relationships further, which we'll cover today. So in terms of results, there are easy ways to support your systems and processes for client retention, endless upsells, and referrals. By implementing these things, having processes documented so that your account manager or yourself can take the lead on client communication and expectation management. And I think that's a big part of this role as well, is the actual expectations being withheld and upholded by your team, but then yourself and communicated to the client. You want to implement a plan so you aren't second guessing the next steps or wondering where clients are at or where your projects are at. So we'll talk about this in 5 easy steps to remember, hopefully. The Daily Pulse, building supportive documents for timelines and strategy, implementing happiness surveys, and putting client gifting in your standard operating procedure, as well as building a knowledge base and a client account management standard operating procedure. So we actually have templates and resources for each one of these 5 steps, and I'll go through them in more detail.
And when we share with you the link with the video recording, we also have a document that has all of these support documents they're going to go through. So you'll get a PDF of all of them as well.
Yes. So the first one is the Daily Pulse, and this is our secret to happy clients. It's the quick updates to clients that we actually do on the daily as a best practice. And daily communication with your clients builds trust and relationships from the get-go. So you're getting to them before they maybe even have any questions. And it's that key piece of the relationship of always being available. And I think it's important to note that you're pulsing on client projects and also updating your project management software on the daily. So it's just that constant pulse that builds a lot of confidence in whoever's managing those client relationships, because they know that they got it. They know exactly what's happening next, and they've communicated that to their team and to your clients as well. So getting to know your clients, building trust sometimes just comes down to actually being available to them.
So Emma, a lot of people would say, well, you know what, we have some sort of a project management software, Monday, Asana, Teamwork, whatever, that our clients have access to, so they can log in anytime to see what's going on. What I'm hearing you say is don't make them log in, but actually proactively send them something that basically just shows up somewhere in their world, whether you communicate with them on Slack or email, as opposed to giving them the passive instruction to just go look when they want to. Am I understanding that right?
I think there is a balance there, to be honest, because I've seen it work really well when clients do have access to your project management software because it's very like clean and buttoned up. And there's opportunity within that project management software system, having a task that's the daily pulse. So you're tagging them, you're interacting with them, you're building that relationship with them through a task, or whether it's Slack or email. I think it's just that important touch point for relationships. And if they have a portal that they can log into, there's maybe a bit of a disconnect for some clients. There's definitely a pain point
Right.
there where it's like, here's the link, here's the link,
Right.
here's the link. So it's that constant reminding them that you are there for them.
Okay.
I also think that it makes a difference what the age of the client is, because there are some clients who are eager for information and eager to be, what way in touch and Slack and this and that. And then there are other clients who are, maybe not so much.
Well, Megan, I also think it not only age, but probably position, right? So if it's the CEO, they may not want the updates quite as often, but if they're the director of marketing, because somebody's asking them what's going on, they probably do want that daily communication. So,
Exactly.
Emma, do you have some clients who say daily is too much, or does everybody like, nope, I love the little ping. I can ignore it if I want to, but I like to know that you're thinking about me.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it does depend. And this is our best practice from the get-go. So it's kind of that idea of like, I'm all over this right now. And then I do find there's that opportunity because you've purposely built that relationship. There's so much trust there that they know, oh, Emma's got this. They have no question in their mind. So I think continually it can look a little bit different. And a lot of this is gut feel too. So if you feel like this client doesn't know what I'm doing, I need to give them a response or an update ASAP, you should implement the daily pulse. If you have that really great, natural, authentic relationship that you know that they know what you're doing, then there's opportunity to maybe extend this a little bit depending on, the time frame. But anything less than weekly, I feel like is not enough, especially in this digital world of there's so much happening all the time and advertising, so many things. And so whether it's reporting on numbers, add an additional touch point just to check in with them as a person as well.
Well, and if your account people are feeling micromanaged, it really is the clients are hungry for more information. And the more proactive we can be about it, the better. Cameron, I see your comment about clients don't read anything. Again, I think part of it is one of the things we talk about in the AE Bootcamp is really understanding every client's communication style. And so, for example, saying to a client, look, I want to give you a 3 or 4 sentence update every day. Would you rather have that by text? Would you have that by email? Would you prefer that in my Slack? Do you want me to leave you a voicemail at the office so it's there when you get there? Like, tell me how you want to be communicated to, because it may be that, their inbox has 500 or 600 emails a day, so they're not reading that. But somehow there is a way that they want to be communicated with, and asking for that specific direction, I think it's helpful.
Mhm. Exactly. And building that confidence that you're on it. All right, the next one is managing expectations by building a documented timeline and visualizing your strategy. So I think a lot of what I talk about in our training program too with client account managers is relationship is one thing, but explaining the value of what you're doing really helps boost that relationship no matter what. And how do you explain your value? A lot of it's just documentation and explaining the strategy in tangible ways that the client actually understands. So explaining the metrics in meaningful ways and using a template to outline your expected timeline events keeps you accountable for what's happening next, but also keeps the client in the loop. And if you have something that's pretty visually, it's easier to remember. And it's one of those things that you can reference often. So you can attach it in your emails, you can go back to it on a call with your client. all of these things, like presenting your strategy with visualization techniques to narrate the story. So you're showing them what you're doing. I'll show you some examples on this as well. And it's important to start at the onboarding phase with like a baseline, because I often get asked that, because there's that question of like, how digital marketing savvy are your clients? Like, do you really have to explain what a lead is or what all the marketing acronyms that we use are? But I do think there's so much opportunity to start at a baseline, then grow from it. So you have a typical onboarding experience and you're walking through the steps that you know work, with clearly outlining your expectations so you can guide the client on the right track. So this is an example of like a timeline that we actually have in our strategy outline templates that you'll have full access to. And it's just a really good starting point. So I would use this on an onboarding call with my clients where I'm like, okay, right now we're in the middle here for the onboarding meeting. We're going to be talking about the funnel outline, the audience targeting, the messaging strategy. In 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have the campaign launch meeting, and I'll kind of walk through the steps. So I'm narrating the story of the first month at the agency, and then moving forward from there, that I'm kind of breaking down all of the things that we're doing behind the scenes. So it can also help me with that daily pulse. I'm like, okay, we're here now. Like, this is what we're working on. This is what's coming up next. Even if I don't have ads for approval, or if I don't have the exact deliverables that I will have for the next steps, this is just a really good visual representation of what's happening to start expressing your expectations as well to what you're actually working on.
It seems like this would be particularly important when you're doing work that your client doesn't understand, like PPC or web dev, or things where they see what's on the surface, but they have no idea all of the steps and the details you have to do underneath. So the more sort of clouded the work is, the more they don't understand the process or the level of detail that goes into your work. This would not only help them sort of understand why things take as long as they do, but I think it would also create a perception of value that sometimes I think we struggle with our clients. They just think we go to a computer and punch a couple of keys and magic happens. They don't really understand the depth of what you're all doing on their behalf. So as an outline like this, a visual like this, would sort of help them understand. And maybe you even break up between the campaign launch and the onboarding, like, here's what we're doing for these 2 weeks when we're not talking to you other than your daily pulse, but here's what we're doing every day to sort of move to get ready to the launch meeting. Because I think sometimes clients don't understand. They get so frustrated that it takes us a while to do our work because they don't understand how complicated the work is.
Yes.
So can I ask a question about this? Your process is, I love this. It's similar to some things that we've done, but maybe a little simpler, which is great. Is this client onboarding, or is it project onboarding, or is it both?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it's both, because there's different timelines for different parts of the client journey, I'll say, and I always want to bring it back to the timeline. So I might have a template that I start with for something like this, but this might be very client specific too. So it's something
Right.
that I need to be able to edit, maybe even on the fly. It's like, oh, this kickoff call didn't go how I thought it would. We're going to add on more services. It won't be 1 to 2 weeks. It's going to be XYZ. So that's a good point, depending on the project or the campaign.
But Megan, your point is interesting. It would be interesting to have one that's sort of not generic, but sort of 30,000 foot, like, this is how we work together. And
Right.
like, here's how this happens. And then you would have one of these for each different project or campaign, because the deliverables and the timelines are be specific to those. But you could keep going back to sort of the overarching one and then add the detail underneath, right?
Yeah, I love that. We're building client onboarding tools right now because we had 20-year clients. So we're in a new place. So this is great.
Good. I'm glad. And that's exciting. New onboarding system. Another aspect of this is to explain the strategy. And I think visual learners will love this kind of thing where as I'm talking, so whether it's like a recording of a Loom video that I'm talking through a web design strategy, or on the kickoff call, or as you're implementing a new service for your client, I'm walking them through the piece by piece strategy that we're working on together. And I always think of one of my clients, I think it was like a year and a half into our client relationship, and it was like a lead generation agency. And she was like, Emma, what does it mean when someone becomes a lead? And I was like, oh, wait, what do you mean? And she was like, I don't understand. Like, what do they do to become a lead? So it's like, okay, this is totally on me. Let me walk you through a process, filling out a lead form, and then where do they go? And then where do they go after that? And what is important in that targeting piece, because we're gathering insights from the A/B testing for the audiences within the campaign to become a lead. So what triggers that step? And that was such an opportunity to educate me in what I need to educate clients. So explaining your value again, that you're not just pressing a button and a website is made. It's this step-by-step process, and it's very intricate in terms of the retargeting efforts, or how you need to have a lead magnet host page, or like whatever it is, having something visually that you communicate with your clients within your step-by-step process is really helpful. So we have a few examples of these in our outline templates, just kind of that outline of what's actually happening behind the scenes. And then an important piece of this is explaining your expectations to your client. So whether you're explaining that digital marketing is not the golden ticket to success, you might not say those words exactly, but giving them an idea of industry benchmarks or what you're expecting based on the current day-to-day times, when you will be communicating with your client, what hours you work, I think is also important, like where you live in the world, explaining all of these expectations of quick boundaries that you have with your client at the very beginning in writing, so that you can reference it in the future as well. And I think this is just an easy win for a lot of people to just be very upfront about the expectations of their services and what we expect as client account managers moving forward. And it opens the door to the client maybe asking questions or learning more about you and your system.
And would you give them that as they're signing a contract, as they're making a commitment? Do you pull it back out every so often? Do you dust it off to remind them? Like, is this a one-time tool, or is this hey, every quarter when we meet together to review what we did over the last quarter, let's review what our goals were and what our metrics were?
Yes, so this kind of happens within the sales process already, I think with a lot of goal setting too. And I find that sometimes it can get lost from the sales process to the actual onboarding process and forward. So there's a lot of different aspects of expectations. So realizing how achievable they actually are, I think is important to address within the onboarding process. So having the strategy outline template step by step, all written out for your kickoff call. But then, like you said, routinely after that as well. So whether it's a monthly reporting session, you're kind of walking through, or if you just have like those clients who maybe push your boundaries a little bit, you can reference back to this very kindly and say, hey, like, let's get on the same page. Remember when we touched base on this? Like, this is my expectations moving forward. Like, how can I best help you? It's a good frame of reference.
So someone had asked in the chat and I missed it, going back to the daily pulse for a minute, but it sort of ties to this. Is the daily pulse where you would sort of let clients know progress on a project too? Or is it more just an overarching, hey, just want to touch base, we're still working on this, this, and this? Or are you getting down to almost like project detail in that daily pulse?
Yes. So as we know, if you compared day over day metrics with digital advertising,
Right.
not very meaningful. I would say weekly updates that really dig into the data and whether it's accompanied maybe by a Loom video or something like that, where you're walking through their report that you're providing for them, that's more valuable than every day being like, oh, it went up $1 or down $3, or I wouldn't recommend that at all. But doing that on a routine basis, so maybe Tuesdays are your, more heavy reporting days. But it would be project updates where you're keeping them in the loop of everything that's happening, but maybe not strict data every day.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is it's work updates, but not result updates.
Yes. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good put it.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you're celebrating like a specific win that
Sure.
happened, that could be a good one. There's definitely exceptions to that rule, but I think that's a good one. Cool. The next one I want to talk about is happiness surveys or the Net Promoter Score, or also status surveys. I know depending on branding, happiness survey versus status survey kind of depends where you want to fit this into your system. But asking for feedback on your systems and processes is key to actually opening the door to growth and opportunities with your client. So I recommend to make this personal by not automating this to a certain extent, because a lot of it's gut feel, to be honest. So I wouldn't want to have my happiness survey sent out right after their worst month in 6 months, like, oh, how are we doing? What's happening? Unless I kind of reframe it with an email of like, from everything we've discussed, this is what I want to do moving forward. Do you mind filling out this quick feedback form so we're all on the same page? Like that kind of idea. And it's important to actually implement the feedback. So typically a questionnaire can just be 3 questions, like what is your favorite thing about us? What can we do better? And then just ask anything else. So they can go on and rave about you as much as possible in just that quick survey format. And it really encourages like completion if it is shorter. And I would recommend valuing the insight that you get back from your clients. So celebrating with them, or if it's a bit more on the negative side, that's opportunity for you to take action with them and figure out the best path forward.
So do you recommend doing it for all the clients at once so you can come back to clients and say, hey, everybody, thanks for taking the happiness survey. We heard that our bills are hard to understand, and so we're going to implement these changes? Or are you doing it episodically, individually for every client, and then reporting back to them individually?
I like to do it on an individual basis because it's part of that client relationship. But I do have reminders for myself, typically on like the 2 weeks in the onboarding, and then maybe a month in, and then every 3 months. So I'm in that cadence of asking for feedback. And that would be quite client specific, unless you were onboarding multiple clients at once. But I like to make it for them specifically.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've all heard of the NPS. So this idea of like client satisfaction to be able to promote you further. So this is just so effective in getting this implemented in your systems quite easily. And I think it's more and more being promoted through so many different types of industries. So asking for feedback does really lead to referrals and to testimonials, especially when they're positive. So you can really celebrate those wins with like the 5-star that you're getting with your clients.
Emma, we've got a question in the chat. Mary's saying, I've been doing a quarterly pulse survey for a couple of years, just 5 quick questions, and the response rate has gone way down. What is the expectations for clients responding to daily or occasional pulse surveys on an ongoing basis?
Oh, so I wouldn't probably ask for feedback like too much, I would say. Like even every week, I think might be too much in order for them to take that action of filling out a survey.
I think
But
she's saying that she's been doing it quarterly, but is also wondering how, if you do a daily pulse, do clients respond back?
Oh, I see. I see. I'd say it depends on client. A lot of my clients would respond back. A lot of it's trying to get ahead of their questions. So it's that relationship builder where I'm trying to answer their questions before they have them. So a lot of it's just agreeing or like, oh, thanks, Emma. Like that kind of idea of just quick responses back. And if they have action items for me, then I'm just keeping them in the loop and they might not respond as often.
So Mary, a question for you. Are you like, if I'm a client and I fill it out, is there any response back? Like thanks to all of you who responded to our quarterly client survey. Here's what we learned. Here's what we're doing. Or is it like they're just telling you and then there's quiet?
We report back not after each quarter, but we do report back on like an annual basis, just how our clients are rating us on things. But there is one place that if they have any concerns or questions about anything, they can fill that out. And I always respond individually to that. But I had gone from like 22 or 24 responses. Every quarter went down. Fourth quarter, I only had 2 responses. And then I was back up to 6 for first quarter. So
So I might suggest you, if you're sending them out, if I'm understanding you right, you're sending it to all the clients at once, asking them to respond, right?
yeah,
So I try this. Now, when you do the next one, send an email back to everybody a week or 2 afterwards and say, to those of you that responded, thank you very much. We appreciate, the confidence that you clearly have in our this team, this team, this team. But we also heard that you have a concern about this, and here's what we're like. I would pick out something that they are not happy about every time and tell them what you're going to do to fix it every quarter, so that you're sort of feeding them and saying, look, if you tell us something, we'll make it better. If you tell us something, we'll make it better, as opposed to waiting to once a year responding back. I think that will, let's see if that increases the participation. And if not, we'll come up with something different.
okay, thanks.
Do you do any sort of a prize or offer or
No.
dinner at your husband's restaurant, anything like that?
We haven't done any incentives like that, but that's something. My rock this quarter is revamping our our client kind of performance indicator. So this is why I'm here today. So this is
Okay,
great.
good. All right, Emma, you're back.
That's great. Actually, perfect timing for talking about client gifting because there's so many different aspects to this to make it personal, like your husband's restaurant. Systemizing your process so you're reminded to be thoughtful. And I know that sounds kind of silly because I think we're all naturally thoughtful people, but having a recurring task. So having a client gift, whether it's in the onboarding process, like that 2 weeks in or 1 month in or every 3 months, or if you are a Christmas person and you want to do Christmas gifts, I think it's the idea of making it easy. So having reminders for yourself, having a process for client gifting, and building client profiles, which is basically just a document that you're writing down your clients' names and their interests and keeping them updated. So for example, I have 2 Huskies and I might just casually drop that on a call. I would love if the next time someone wrote me a note, they included my 2 Huskies. Like how sweet is that when there's just like these one-off comments that you don't think anything of, but someone remembers that. You want to be that person for your clients, and surprising and delighting clients by making them personal just feels extra special. And it's great to have someone designated on your team to take care of this for you. So just decide on that person, whether it's yourself or someone else, and have a budget per client per quarter. So your team knows that they can surprise and delight without permission. It's a super easy way to build that relationship with client profiles and just making them feel extra special.
So Emma, are you saying that everybody doesn't get the same cookie tin, but somebody gets pet treats and somebody gets a stuffed toy for the baby and somebody gets caffeine, like based on their, like, do you have a virtual supply closet? Like I can remember back early in my career, I worked at a large agency and we literally had a supply closet that had stuff. And a lot of it was agency branded stuff, which I never thought the clients were that super excited to get, but that you could go into the closet, if you will, and you could gift out to people. So are you suggesting A, every gift is unique to the client? And B, is that something that somebody goes out and orders a bunch of, or is it just you have a list of things that people can gift, or are there tools that you use? You know, I know there's somebody sent us a bunch of pet treat. We have 3 dogs. So somebody sent us a bunch of pet treats for Valentine's Day, which I know they got through like a service where you could go in and pick the thing you wanted to send. So how do you recommend we handle the gifting?
Yeah, we actually have a gift guide that you'll receive after this, which is a good place to start because I love branded agency stuff, like whether it's a toque or a sweater. I would love that with a handwritten card. Like just any way that you can kind of go above and beyond for your clients. It kind of depends too, like just on your relationships, how well you know clients. Like sometimes it's just hard where you're like, okay, I know what to get these 3 people. It's like the classic, but you have that one last person on your list and you're like, oh, I don't know what to get them, like the guy who has everything or whatever it is. So I think if it's easier for you to make them all the same, but you have a handwritten card with each one and you're personalizing it in that way, that's what I recommend.
So Katie is asking, our largest client has a no gift policy. Suggestions for how to delight clients when tangible gifts or meals is technically not allowed. And then Taylor said, can you take them to lunch? So Katie, I'm assuming meals, you couldn't take them to lunch?
Technically not. I mean, it's a large client relationship. We've got multiple clients in different lines of business. Some sort of allow it, but some are super sticklers and are like, we're not allowed to do that. So I just didn't know if anyone had encountered sort of a similar challenge.
Can you make a charitable donation in their name to a charity that matters specifically to them?
That's a great suggestion. I'm sure we could do that. I think that, it's basically they're trying to prevent you from giving any individual who works there something of tangible value. So I would assume that's a great suggestion. I'm sure we could do that.
I think that feels super personal, but they're sort of understanding that you're trying to do something for them, but not put them in a position where they have to violate their own rules. So that might be a good one.
Yeah, great thought.
Most of our clients have had that rule in place for many years, and we've found that we could do like, cookie baskets or things like that
that they could share.
Yeah, so the whole department gets involved, or occasionally we would just do a free-for-all lunch where anybody could come, breakfast, that sort of thing, and those things seem to go over well. But we would always get permission ahead of time from, the managers.
Another thing you might do, Katie, is offer to come in and do some educational programming for their staff. So that would be a gift, but it's not a, tangible money thing. But I think your clients would appreciate it.
Yeah. Another good thought. Thank you, Drew.
Yep. Okay, another question. Do you set a gift budget based on the client's revenue or some sort of tiering? So Drew gets 1 cookie, somebody else gets 12 cookies.
I have seen that done before. And I think honestly, it depends too, like this has to be agency owner approved. One time I had a client and I think there was like 25 people on every client call. And typically we would do a $25 Starbucks gift card just as like a thoughtful little thing when we launched. And I was like, am I allowed to do that with that many people? Like who do I gift? Who's the best person? So I think there's so many unique situations that will come up, but it's really the thoughtfulness that counts. And however big or small the gift is, I think it is meaningful no matter what.
I will say the handwritten note makes a huge difference. Then you know that they didn't farm it out to somebody without any thought or any sort of, part of it is that they took the time to do it. So even if you have somebody else package up the gift or you send the handwritten notes to a fulfillment center and they actually do the packaging and mailing, something that is in your handwriting in today's world feels very personal.
Yeah, I agree.
With
And we
employees too, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Like everyone loves snail mail.
Yep.
Right. The last one I want to cover today is building a knowledge base and a client account manager specific standard operating procedure, because there's so much opportunity to document your processes so you can fine tune them. And an SOP should be an ever evolving document. It's never actually truly finished. It's something that's living. So it's constantly being renewed and looked at and redrafted in order to improve your processes. And something that we encourage our client account managers to do is to mimic their agency owners' explanations and communication. So whether it's like screenshots or just like phrases that they use or the way they explain their strategy is so important for the whole team to learn that language of the brand and of the agency, and having a written resource of like if-then situations. So the idea of you get a client email and maybe I don't know how to handle it as a client account manager. I'm thinking, well, if this, then I should do that. Or if this comes up, then I should go to this person on my team to know exactly what to do. So it's just this knowledge base to build confidence in your team and to have a level of accountability that everyone kind of knows what's coming up next, and making it better. So documents like everything we covered today, so daily pulse templates, strategy visualization templates, client profiles, gift guides, happiness surveys, and more should all be developed and processed in your specific client account management SOP.
And do you have one of those for every client, or is some of this stuff universal? So is there some things that here's how we treat all clients, and then here are specific SOPs for each client? So is it sort of an overlapping set of documentation?
I normally have one master SOP, and then I might have breakouts in the client profiles. So maybe if a client has a very specific service that was maybe like grandfathered in or whatever it would be, that would be in my client profile document for the standard operating procedure that's linked to my master document.
Okay.
This is an
And
example.
typically, where do you store that?
Usually in a Google Drive folder, but sometimes I feel like it's easier to build it in your project management software. So especially ones like ClickUp or Notion are great for living documents. So I'd recommend just to have it in there. And it's kind of a space for everyone to take part, but for the client account manager to take ownership of. So you can for sure get feedback on everything. And this is where I typically like to start with like a high level process, just knowing the trigger points of what happens and who's actually completing those tasks. And then you can build from here the timeline. So how long things are actually taking for expectation management, and then the task descriptions of those, and then figuring out when is that task actually complete? Is that an easy one for in your project management software? You have your to-do list and you're checking everything off, or is that a never-ending recurring task? All these little things kind of start from this high-level step-by-step process. Any questions on this one?
I'm curious, for those of you that have done this or thought to do this, the reason why you don't do it, I often hear, is because you don't have time. You guys everyone's so busy. You're so busy doing billable work, fill in the blank, trying to stay profitable. So if you've done this, how did you get it done? And if you haven't done it, why haven't you done it? And then I'm going to ask you how we do it eventually, but I'd be curious to hear how any of you have cracked this nut, if you have.
We we had a bunch of younger folks in the team a few years ago. We had no choice but to write a lot of process. And no matter what we have found is, no matter well, first of all, you forget that they exist. You know, you
Right.
just have to remind yourself to constantly go back to it. But there's always a reason to build in another process, no matter what, or augment what is currently in place. So it sounds great, but having the discipline to follow up and implement and constantly retrain and reiterate is half the battle.
I was going to say, how do you calendar that, Lori? So how do you know to go back to the client onboarding process once a quarter or once a year to revise it? Or is it
I'm-
just as you're training new people, you automatically do it?
I think both. I think it really does take both. I mean, the whole reason I'm here today is someone mentioned EOS. So our rock is, you know, putting a line in the sand between customer service and customer focus. So what is it that we're really doing to be, you know, to focus on the customer? And so sessions like this, you know, I'm going to take this session and have the whole team look at it afterwards.
Right.
But being methodical each year, so we've got our rocks defined for the year, being methodical each year to make sure that process at some point is included in a rock,
As
I
a
think
rock,
is,
right?
yeah, is half the battle.
Anybody else that has done this successfully? So we have another vote for EOS rocks. So
We do a lot of this, not exactly this way, but we do a lot of it. And one of the things that keeps us on task is we have a weekly client focus meeting that's both clients and prospects. And during that time, we talk about these things we do for each of our clients, whether it's, you know, sending a gift or finding relevant content for them, or, you know, whatever it is that ties in with our, you know, our monthly content and some other things that we have going on. So that's been really a game changer for us in terms of keeping on top of this kind of stuff.
I think somebody else said in the chat too, EOS, but they're saying that it often gets assigned to their project manager. So for those of you that have a dedicated project manager, often the building of the system and processes falls to them because they're usually the ones trying to hold us to adhering to those processes. So if you have that role, that feels like a natural place if you're going to assign that responsibility. And I will say many agencies calendar. So whenever they finish a process, they calendar usually a 3-month check-in, like, okay, we've now been working this process for 3 months. What did we miss? And then annually a revision of that process. So it literally goes on the calendar. And, you know, most of you, when you think about it, you probably have no more than 10 or 15 detailed processes of how you get the work done. So it's not like you're revising 30 processes a month. You know, I think you can also go overboard. You don't really have to document how you make coffee in the morning or, you know, things like that. I mean, I think you can go overboard with your processes. It really should be the mission critical processes that are internal facing and client facing. Because I think you also miss a lot of the internal onboarding, both clients and employees, is a place where probably most agencies could use a little tune up. So Emma, how do you recommend we create these processes?
Yeah, I think it always starts with designating that person on the team, because a lot of this is just accountability driven. So there's different zones of geniuses that everyone has. And I think there's the visionaries and there's the doers and there's the project managers and client account managers and so many different things. And having one person who kind of records everything, I think, is an important place to start. And then from there, it should be collaborative. So once that leader kind of takes this on, they might be interviewing team members and their processes just to get an understanding of, when I assign copy to our copywriter, sometimes it just goes out into space. You know, I assign that task to project management software and I have no idea when to expect that or when to actually mark the due date for that to then communicate that with clients. So all these little bits and pieces are so important. And I think having a lead on that is important to relay the information to the team and follow up with them. And it's basically just a safeguard for your agency too, so that people can take vacation and things are still tight enough that people know exactly what's happening behind the scenes. So I think that's a good way to look at it. And like I said, it's an ever evolving process. So it's not a one and done project done in a month. It's that exciting opportunity to constantly be evolving all of your processes and making sure that they fit in with the now, but then for the future as well, what you want to work towards. Cool. Well, in terms of the takeaways, like I mentioned, we are going to give you some resources to get started on all of these things. So we actually have a podcast and a specific podcast episode about the Daily Pulse. We have strategies, slide templates for that expectation management, the timelines, everything in terms of communicating KPIs to your clients, happiness surveys or status surveys, as well as NPS. Client gifting SOP, we have like a gift guide of a bunch of different ideas depending on your budget, depending on where they are in the world. And then we also have a client account manager SOP template just to help you get started with what we typically see in an SOP and how we like to kind of frame it within a document. But like Drew said, it could also live in your project management software or wherever you kind of house that information for your internal team. So thank you for everything today, and let me know if you have any questions.
Questions, guys?
I had one quick question. On
Fire away.
the Daily Pulse, are you doing that at the same time every single day just to get the client's behavior and buy-in to that process, or are you doing it sporadically throughout the day? Kind of what's been a best practice that you've seen so far?
I would say personally, I'm a morning gal. I get all my work
Mm.
done in the mornings. I would say it is personal preference, but I really like that thought process of getting the expectation for your client. So you're in a rhythm and a flow that feels really natural. So I would say that's, whoever wants to take that on the team to develop a workflow around that. So it's habit and that it's probably not left to the last minute at the end of the day either.
I think however you do it, the consistency is the critical thing. Like a client knows every morning at 10 or every morning at 8 or every morning at the end of the day at 5, they're going to get something that they can look for to, we talk about this in the AE boot camps, but our clients are constantly being asked by someone where something we're working on is at, where the results are at, when it's going to be done, all of those things. And so they get off your back if they know that every day at 8 a.m. they're going to get an updated email. So that day they look like they are plugged in, that they're managing you and us well. So a lot of it is around their own comfort, around not feeling in the dark, because they're going to be asked at some point during the day about something. And the most uncomfortable thing for them is to say, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you. So I would say it is the same time every day. If you're going to do it every day, probably doesn't matter what time of day, as long as they know that they can expect it. So probably for most of your AEs, it would be easier to do before the day gets crazy. So maybe one of the first things they do is how many ever clients they have, they do those daily pulses before they start into their meetings and all the other things that they have going on.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
I'll chime in. So one of the questions I have is probably a difficult one, but how do you find strong account people? Because it is more than, a middleman, right? It's really about being able to critically think. We've struggled with, making sure we get the right hires in place. And we have a robust onboarding program for our account service team. But how do you figure out, or how do you find the strongest, the right fits?
Mm-hmm. That is a nut I wish I could crack to have like the perfect SOP for finding that best fit person. I think a lot of it is what we call internally. And I know Taylor and I are looking at each other because it is one of those challenges. and we call them unicorns because they are defined like that perfect fit of confidence and kindness and someone who knows digital marketing strategy through and through and who has experience in that, as well as project management skills. And I could probably list a bunch more. And it's something that we call dot vibes. And it's basically how warm they are with clients and how warm their communication is and how easy they are to get along with. And it's just this vibe, this energy that you feel from someone. And you want them to make your clients feel good and be confident in your team. So I would say, like, of course, at DOT, we have client account management services, and also in our training program, we have resources that we train AEs and CAMs on, but a lot of it is those soft skills. So it's partnering with someone who maybe just needs help with confidence in client communication, like maybe meetings specific, or they need help with their project management because they're so good at the relationship, but they miss out on the actual follow through and the follow up with clients and that actual piece of making the project move forward, even though they're just a fun, amazing person to have around. So I would say it's a balance in having people who are really great at that people piece.
Perfect. No, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't know if
So-
you guys had found the magic bullet, but it sounds like it's just difficult in general.
Honestly, right now it's everybody's struggling to find them. So they are a rare beast right now. But being smart about testing. So as you know, we do a lot of work with strategic talent management and a guy named Art Boulay, and we've profiled the best of account people, and he can test your candidates against that profile to tell you where they fall short and where they really shine. And then I think you have to have your own test, which is you want to see them present something. You want to see them think through some things. One of my favorite things for an AE test is to give them a client profile and say, okay, you're meeting with this client for the first time. It's your discovery meeting. What questions would you ask them? And see how smart their questions are. But have them present the questions to you so you can also see their presentation skills.
That's
Cameron,
great.
are you asking? Cameron, are you asking if I can share Art's information? If I can, yes, I'll put a link in the. We'll put a link on the page where we put the recording and stuff. And then Taylor said they recorded a podcast about how they recruit AEs, so we'll get the link to that podcast as well. But I think sometimes you guys are so excited when you find somebody that you think is a good option because they're so hard to find that you skip the testing phase
Mhm.
and you trust your gut. And having taken many a tearful phone call from some of you when your gut was wrong and that person had a relationship with your client and you have to let them go or whatever it is, the testing is not something that you should skip. But also in today's environment, you got to be able to go from first interview to offering a job in a week, or they're going to be taken out of the picture because someone else is going to hire them. So we just did a podcast about picking up that process that I'll also include on that page for you guys to listen to. Someone is saying that they have a rubric that they use throughout the interview process to help them identify individuals who have both the soft and hard skills. Sherry, if you'll send that to me, if you don't mind, I'll just share it with everybody. If you'll just email that to me, if you'd be willing to do that, that would be great. And then I'll include your email if people want to chat you up. So you may be sorry you offered that, but thank you for sharing with everybody.
No problem.
Other questions for us? Okay, Emma, Taylor, thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise. I know this is what you guys do day in and day out, so we appreciate you teaching us a little bit more and also sharing the resources that you're sharing. So thank you for that. Everybody else, thank you for attending. I will send out an email. So just like you got the emails about this event, I will send out an email once we get the page built with all the resources. And again, please feel free to share it with anybody and everybody inside your agency. Just keep it inside the family, the AMI family, if you will. All right. Hopefully I'll see all of you guys at the summit in a couple months. Talk to you soon. Actually, I think Taylor, you'll be there, right? Okay, good.
A couple
So
people
it's
from
our
our
friends-
team will be there, yes.
Awesome. So you can have more conversation at the summit as well. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Drew.
You bet.
Thank you.